All right, Sam's hit us with a little discussion video of sorts. Why Yu-Gi-Oh never had Pokemon's longevity? So interesting discussion to be had here, and I'm sure there's a lot to break down, but I think something that's very fascinating about this, for those of you who grew up as now probably retired fathers in the Big 26 as 90s kids, will probably remember, thank you for the gifted sub, Anal Enjoyer. That's, you know your audience. I think that what was interesting at the time was I recall Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon being neck and neck in terms of their popularity. The anime for both of them was popping off. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was, in my school, personally, was more popular than Pokemon. And at some point in, like, early 2000s, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Just kind of lost steam to Pokemon, and Pokemon completely steamrolled ahead. I'm sure there's probably some figures and stuff on this. I do recall searching this up, and I think in terms of, like, company revenue and all that kind of stuff, I think Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Were pretty equal during that time period, but then I guess, like, Duel Monsters ended, they changed the character, and the Pokemon games were just good. Like, say what you want about the Pokemon games, maybe they've fallen off a little bit recently. The Pokemon games are unbelievable. You know, they really are. And Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think has that good of an equivalent. But we'll see what Sam tells us. All right, let's hop in.
User on X, Dahlia, posted a question that broke the internet. So why did Yu-Gi-Oh! Not have the same longevity that Pokemon did? 1.9 million views, 937 replies. People losing their minds in the comments. Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans offended. Pokemon fans smug. People who haven't touched a card since 2004 suddenly all have an opinion. And
oh my god, do you guys remember those old school news reports? And they would show, like, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, like, on, like, the TV in 2001 and stuff. Oh my god. Ah, I'm so old. Holy crap, this takes me back.
Honestly, it's one of the most interesting questions anyone's asked pop culture in a very long time. Dahlia had to even clarify in a follow-up. I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Still exists because I play it. I'm saying it dipped in popularity while Pokemon didn't. And that's exactly it.
I mean, to be technical about it, Yu-Gi-Oh! Didn't dip in popularity. It just didn't gain as much momentum as Pokemon did. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten more popular. And it's probably more popular than it's ever been, at least in terms of its attendance and stuff like that. Who knows how it does on the merch side of things. And the anime viewings. Anime viewings. It just stagnated a little bit more than Pokemon, right? And Pokemon just is in every household now, you know? It's unavoidable.
This isn't about whether Yu-Gi-Oh! Is dead. It's about why one franchise became the single greatest media empire in human history, worth over 150 billion. And the other one, despite being so beloved, just as iconic, just as culturally significant, didn't. Before we get into the why, I need to make something very clear, because the internet loves to rewrite history. Both of these franchises were absolutely enormous. In the late 90s and in the early 2000s, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon,
incredible editing.
The two biggest things in every elementary school, middle school, and Saturday morning television block on the planet. Pokemon launched in Japan in February 1996 as a Game Boy game. The anime followed in 1997. The cards arrived in the US in the late 1998 to the early 1999s. By the time it reached Western shores, it was already synchronized as a cultural invasion. Games, anime, cards.
It's really weird syntax, right? Like it's okay. Anyway,
Donald's toys, movies, all at once, all pointing.
I think Sam's trying to hit that normie audience,
huge.
You know.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Debuted as a manga in Weekly Shonen Jump in the late 1996.
But it cannot be understated just how big Yu-Gi-Oh! Was.
The anime
like, literally, maybe even bigger than
in
Pokemon.
2000, and reached the US shortly right after. The trading card game arrived stateside in 2002 with Legends of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. 4 years after Pokemon cards, as recently as 2021. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had actually outsold Pokemon in total cards. 35 billion to 34 billion. Crazy. For one.
That's a terrible measurement, though. Right? That's a horrible metric. Like, total cards, Yu-Gi-Oh! Packs are just bigger. right? Like Pokemon packs are 6 cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards are 9. Adjusted for inflation. Like, so I don't know if that's like the best thing ever to really measure them by. Also, this is, you know, it's very obvious if you know, but just to clarify for people that might not like think about it this way, this is obviously just the card game. Like Pokemon's card game, I'm pretty sure like isn't even that big, right? Like Pokemon is the giant mammoth that it is, from merch, from the video games. The anime is still going, right? Like, at this point, Pokemon, like, the card game is like a side project. Like, that's like, the empire comes from everything else, you know?
One brief moment, the king of games was literally
And the fact that it's
winning.
still keeping up with Yu-Gi-Oh, by the way, as like, it's like,
collecting
you know,
boom.
4th most
In just
popular
the
way to
following
engage
year
with
alone,
Pokemon is
in
insane.
2022,
Just goes to show you how unbelievable
Pokemon
Pokemon is.
sold 9.1 billion cards. By 2023, they'd sold over 52 billion cards total worldwide. Yu-Gi-Oh's lead lasted about 2 years, and then Pokemon just ran away with it permanently. So no, Yu-Gi-Oh was not a flop. It was not a knockoff. It was a genuine phenomenon that millions of people loved. The question is why Pokemon kept winning while Yu-Gi-Oh plateaued. And the answer is layered. But the people in Dahlia's replies actually cracked a lot of it open for us. So let's use them as our roadmap. One of the top replies in this thread came from someone named CLP. They got rid of Yugi. Pokemon stuck with Ash for 26 years. Grown men will still watch Yugi and Kaiba run the fade till this day on some Goku and Vegeta shit. And he's right. This is maybe the single biggest structural mistake Yu-Gi-Oh has made. One that
To some extent, I don't know how, you know, super true that is. Like, it probably has a lot to do with it, but from what I understand, and having, like, been to Japan multiple times and talked to, like, you know, like staff and just fans in general, Yusei was low-key, like, more popular than Yugi. And that's, like, 2 franchises, 2 seasons after. Like, 2 whole arcs after, right? Like, I think in some ways there's probably a lot of truth to that, but there is to say there's a lot of like consistency to be had with like casual fans who might dip out of Yugi for like 10 years, come back and it's like, oh, where's Yugi? And it's like, actually it's Yuya Sakaku now. And it's like, who Megalol? You know what I'm saying? So you need to look at it from the perspective of like the greater audience, right? Like the Yu-Gi-Oh fans who are already sold and watch the anime and are invested for 10 plus years consistently. You're all going to have opinions of like, oh yeah, Yusei was the best, Jaden was the best, etc., etc. But for the average like wider audience that maybe engages once every like half decade, like, you know, it having just Ash and Pikachu is like, that's familiarity. It touches on nostalgia. It feels like you can just hop back into where you left off type of thing, you know?
played out slowly over the years, and by the time anybody has noticed, the damage was already done. After the original series ended, Yu-Gi-Oh moved on. GX, new protagonists. 5Ds, new protagonists on motorcycles. Yusei, Jack Atlas, Pro, card games on motorcycle, that was pretty cool. But personally, for me, Zexal, Arc V, Vrains, now Gold Rush? What is that? Each new...
Okay, I was worried he was gonna go with like, oh no, they were the best. Like, it's a wild day to find a Yu-Gi-Oh fan who says like, you know what the best anime was for Yu-Gi-Oh? Zexal, baby.
Show brought a completely new cast, a new setting, a new art style, and with each reset, a portion of the original audience didn't follow, like myself. Meanwhile, Ash Ketchum was catching Pokemon since 1997 all the way till 2023. 26 years. The same kid, Ash Ketchum, the same Pikachu. You could literally drop Pokemon in 2005 and come back in 2019 and Ash Ketchum will still be there. The emotion...
Like, you cannot just understate how important this is. Like, you play when you're a kid, you've got Ash and Pikachu, and then you dip, life happens, you move on 15 years later, and it's like, it's Ash Pikachu. It's so important to, like, a global media, like, franchise like that, you know? It really is.
Continuity was unbroken. But after Duel Monsters, the iconic characters that we love, Yugi, Kaiba, Joey,
Ash was 10 the whole time. Yeah, he's
they're
using
gone.
that
King Beast put
really
it
good
simply
aging
in the
cream.
replies. Shit got too confusing after 5Ds. And truly,
Come on, what? What was so confusing about overlaying? Overlaying is simpler than synchro summoning, surely.
it did. And that's the casual fan experience in a nutshell. Once the motorcycle showed up and the protagonist...
By the way, I'm just, you know, listen, I'm not trying to trigger any Yusei fanboys, but I don't get the motorcycle thing. Like, I've never understood it. Like, I remember at the time when I was younger and I tried to get into, like, the synchro summoning thing, and I'm just like, okay, I kind of like the idea of synchro summonings, but, like, why are they on motorbikes? I could never vibe with it. I don't know. Like,
changed up again. A lot of people quietly
Vroom,
put down
vroom.
the cards and just never really picked it up again. One commenter in the Trevor Allen thread made a point that hit different. Yu-Gi-Oh basically abandoned its primary characters. There is no Ash and Pikachu.
Pikachu with a C, by the way. Why is he reading posts from people with like 10 replies, by the way?
Yu-Gi-Oh has
10
iconic
likes.
monsters it could have run with to become staples
I'm
of
just
the
saying,
universe.
I
but they
posted in
chose
this
not
and I
to
got
do that.
2,000.
And Trevor's
I'm just-
response
he could
was
feature
very
me.
honest. It's fair to say both were 10 out of 10 stories at the
Trevor,
beginning.
we can't be
And Pokemon
quoting Trevor. Oh no, dude, you cannot be doing this, Sam.
chose to copy and paste theirs every few years, which sounds lazy, but it's perfect for kids. And now parents and siblings can relate to it and appreciate it.
You know, this is like a big thing that a lot of Pokemon fans complain about, but you need to understand why it's so genius to just keep repeating the same shit over and over again. If they just, like, all of the Pokemon games are just the fucking same. They're literally just all the same. They get slightly better and better every year, but for the most part, like, they are at the core and at the essence the same. And some people have gotten bored of that. But for most people, like, the silent majority who aren't complaining about this, that's good. They don't want change. They don't want something to be different. I just want to do exactly what I did when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd be surprised at how it's actually a good thing that the Pokemon games are literally just like churning out the same shit they've always done for years, because it's a successful formula and you ain't got to fix what ain't broken, basically.
I guess under 2% of people seeing this know who this is. Honestly, Trevor, I don't even know who that is, bro. Is that Yuma?
Yuya.
No. Yuma is
Yuya?
See, you see this? It even gets confusing for me.
Yuya Sakaki, right?
That guy right there in that picture, Yuma is from...
No, Yuma Sakaki and Yuya... I don't know his surname.
Zexo. That is Yuva.
Okay, Sam's pretending. Listen, I appreciate it, Sam. You gotta pretend for the normies who might watch this and come across this video. Yeah. Yuma Tsukumo? Oh, wait, I got it wrong. Wait, it's Yuma Sakaki. Yuma Tsukumo is the Zexo, and Yuya Sakaki is the Arc. Okay. Well, you know what? Maybe he isn't pretending. I generally didn't know that.
Who? No, Yuya. That is Yuya from Arc V. There you go, Yuya. I almost got it wrong. And guys, that's the genius behind Pokemon's apparent laziness. The repetition of showing Ash Ketchum wasn't a creative failure. It was a generational bridge. A dad who watched Pokemon in 1999 can watch it again with his kid in 2024 and feel at home. The shared experience is priceless, and it's something Yu-Gi-Oh cannot structurally offer the exact same way that Pokemon does it. Here's one that Trevor Allen's thread dug into it with receipts. Literally,
sorry,
guys,
biggest
with pictures. Trevor posted
Trevor
it side
fan
by
here.
side. Pikachu on one side and the wicked worm beast on the other. A grotesque, multi-limbed monster. That's your answer. Look at the two side by side. In general, Pokemon had a broader
What? What do you
appeal
mean?
to
Like,
kids.
you need to understand that that's why Yu-Gi-Oh was like really popular with some people. Okay, Pokemon was the, you know, niche little cutesy wootsy baby thing, and Yu-Gi-Oh was like the cool kids like anime, right? It was edgy. That was like its thing. That was what was so iconic about it. Like, you know, like look at these monsters. Look at Summon Skull. Look at Yugioh. You know.
Don't get me wrong, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards are iconic and had appeal, but to a more selective group of kids. Plus, kids media in general has kind of shifted away from this monstrous, edgy look. Just look at the Goosebumps fall off. And I agree with Trevor. There's a reason Pikachu is on everything from Gucci collaborations to literal airplanes. Anna Air in
Wait,
Japan
there's a Gucci
has
Pokemon
been dating
collab?
Pikachu on their jets since 1998. The character is universally approachable. A 5-year-old loves Pikachu. A grandmother can identify Pikachu. My mom even knows what a Pikachu is, but if I show her a dark magician, she'll get all confused, like, what is this? Everybody knows Pikachu. Meanwhile, Yu-Gi-Oh's monster designs, genuinely incredible. Deeply creative, visually striking, but it's a different language. Dark Magician, Summon Skull, the Gate Guardian. These are cool to a specific kind of kid. That kid is real. I was that kid. And till this day, am still that kid. But that kid is a subset. Pokemon's Pikachu is for everybody. Jeffers in Trevor Allen's thread made a nuanced counterpoint worth including. Pokemon definitely has the broader appeal of cute monsters, especially amongst its biggest icons. But whenever you see references to any card game, you see Blue Eyes and Exodia before you see Charizard. Video games simply gain more mainstream traction than the TCGs. And that's a fair point. But the card game...
You know the craziest thing? Like, I've literally heard people refer to Exodia in other games. Like, I've heard people reference, like, in RPGs, like, talent builds, and they call them, like, Exodia. I've heard people refer to Hearthstone, like, combos as, like, Exodia lines and stuff. Like, it's a pretty unanimous term for some reason, you know? Pokemon doesn't have that. But it's also an interesting question, because how do you capitalize on that? You know, how do you turn that into, like, fans? Or something, right? It's odd. Shadow Realm is also another one. Like I don't hear Pokemon terminology in the greater nerd culture, right? Like sending someone to the Shadow Realm. I hear people say that shit all the time. And they're not Yu-Gi-Oh players. It's kind of interesting.
Is just one corner of the culture. Pokemon.
No one says Garnet. What are you talking? What is this guy saying? Like, Garnet? Who's saying Garnet? What are you talking about? Are they referring to Garnets and Hearthstone?
Yu-Gi-Oh built a really impressive room inside it. JC3
yeah, but you're Yu-Gi-Oh players. I'm talking non-Yu-Gi-Oh players.
Too much complexity added over the years, in my opinion.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Didn't the American government tweet about the Shadow Realm recently? You know, that just, they're talking about sending Iran to the Shadow Realm or something, but I swear that was a thing that was on Twitter recently.
Also mentioned, they really overcomplicated Yu-Gi-Oh as the show went on. Pokemon maintain a certain familiarity that's easy to tap back in.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is a very easy to read field. Look, this is his Kelbeck Mills. This is a shuffler that's triggering to target these three here, the Shuffler, the Rhino, and the Shiren.
And this is the death by 1,000 cuts that nobody talks about. Yu-Gi-Oh in 2002 was pretty easy and accessible. You had monster cards, spell cards, you summon a monster, attack, and the main goal is just to bring your opponent's life points to 0. Kids could play it in the schoolyard without a rule book. Sometimes we would even make our own rules. We just go by straight up instinct. We'll just summon monsters, attack, just exactly like how the show intended us to play. It was easy. It was simple. But modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Link summoning, synchro summoning, XZ summon, pendulum summoning. Half of you guys watching this video probably don't even know what pendulum summoning is. What are we, the alphabet? X, Y, Z?
Oh, I love those clips.
Bro, I know. Trust me. Hand traps, Ash Blossom, Max C, 10-20 negates, Call by the Grave, DDDs, 15 to 30 minute turns.
He's just saying words now. What is he, like, what is the point here? We're just mouthing off terms.
In Yu-Gi-Oh, if you walked away from the game for 5 years and come back, I promise you, you're not going to be playing the same game. Dylan in the replies, capture the vibe.
Like, I'm sorry, what he just did there, you could literally apply to Pokemon. You know? Resistance, stab, penetration, gym leader. Okay, never mind. Maybe it doesn't apply to Pokemon.
Perfectly with some dark humor.
EVs, IVs.
Ended up in the Shadow Realm. That's the player base divided by 2 every year. Pokemon, you can just go to Pokemon Center and be on your way. Yu-Gi-Oh, you literally go to hell if you lose. It's a joke, but it's kind of a harsh truth. Pokemon is warm, forgiving, and it's really easy to get into. But Yu-Gi-Oh, it is intense, high stakes, and it's very demanding. Yu-Gi-Oh is really great for a competitive, dedicated community. And in my opinion, it is not the biggest or the greatest when it comes to mass cultural longevity. Yu-Gi-Oh is big, don't get me wrong, but in comparison to Pokemon, that's a whole nother ball game, bro. Roberto Blake said it best in the replies, and it might be the most accurate take in the entire thread. It has just not the scale. Yu-Gi-Oh has a thriving community, but they did make the game itself too complicated for new players and OG players. The people who grew up playing this game, who watched Yu-Gi Duel Kaiba, who pulled their very first Blue Eyes.
Well, Yu-Gi-Oh's fucked now because Dark Magician is a vanilla level 7. Meanwhile, Pikachu has 200 artworks and different tech, so Pikachu's immortal. Separately is also a Boomer Kids game with funny lines from the 2002 anime. Meanwhile, Pokemon has almost stayed the same with just the core mechanics plus or minus different forms of the iconic cards here and there. Pokemon can always stay relatively simple because of rotation and the way just the turn structure works, but I don't know. Yu-Gi-Oh really needs like a different game mode, right? Like a whole other different game mode that is literally just for babies. And it just doesn't have that.
Who knew every...
You know? You're not going to bait me into talking about Genesis, but I'm sorry. A 5-year-old can't pick up and play Genesis. Okay? A 5-year-old, however, can pick up and play Pokemon.
Every card in the original sets. Even they got left behind as the game evolved. Link monsters, pendulum monsters, 15 to 30 minute turns. And at some point, the game stopped feeling like the one they fell in love with.
Try with your my kid's 2. What do you mean? He's like just about grasping sentences now. Never mind card.
You're not just learning a card game that we all once knew. You're learning years of accumulative mechanics, ban lists,
Rush is pretty popular over there.
Changes every few
but I wouldn't know anything
Pokemon,
about it because it's just not here.
It's just really easy to get into. The rules are simple. The concept is very straightforward. And whether you're 6 years old,
teach Noah missing timing,
the cards for the very first time, or someone returning after a 10-year break, Pokemon welcomes you easier than Yu-Gi-Oh. Unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, Yu-Gi-Oh built something incredible. But over time, the doors just got harder and harder to walk through. Meme Bastard in the reply said, it just wasn't as good at hooking people. Gotta catch them all was one hell of a gimmick. And look.
Okay, like there's plenty of Yu-Gi-Oh gimmicks, all right? Like, what are you saying? Like, come on.
Look, I hear that, but
we literally just talked about Exodia and Shadow Realm.
Let's be
Pot of Greed. Like, come on. Yu-Gi-Oh has penetrated the cultural fabric of the nerd society, but I don't know. It's just not there with the normies, right? I think a lot of nerds and stuff appreciate Yu-Gi-Oh to some extent, but it's just not in the... It's not in the greater... Like, your grandma doesn't know Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Your old-ass uncle, like, doesn't know Dark Magician, right? But they probably know Pikachu.
Fair here, because Yu-Gi-Oh...
Stop saying penetrate. Stop watching porn. It's a word. It means something, okay? Penetrative is a form of entering into a situation or opening up something, okay? It's you are the one with a poisoned brain that cannot hear a word and not think of, like, a certain website, okay? That's you. That's on you.
Has had one of the most iconic catchphrases of all time. It's time to duel.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Time to duel. Come on, you felt that. It's time to duel. God damn. Everyone who grew up in that era felt that. The music kicks in, Yugi's hair goes all crazy, the Millennium Puzzle all shines up. Oh my god. Yami comes out, you feel what I'm saying? Atem comes out, the duel disc snaps wide open, and it's time to duel, baby. It's time to duel. That phrase alone could fill up an entire stadium with nostalgia, and I promise you that. So it's not that Yu-Gi-Oh didn't have a hook. It absolutely did. The problem is what each hook asks you to do. It's time to duel, I'll be honest. Feels like a battle cry. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's time to duel. It's time. It's that time, baby. It's time to get your hands dirty.
Okay, we get it, Sam.
There's an invitation to compete. And competition has a winner and has a loser. It speaks to a different kind of person. It speaks to the kid who wants to truly test themselves. Like me, you know what I'm saying? It's time to duel. But gotta catch them all. I'm gonna be honest, it's completely different. Everybody also knows, you know, gotta catch them all, you know what I'm saying? It's Pokemon. And I'll be honest, gotta catch them all feels like a potion loop. You know, this catchphrase doesn't feel like it's...
I don't know, the more I'm like watching this video and thinking about it, the more I'm kind of like focusing on more so the gameplay rather than like the cultural sort of hegemony that Pokemon established, right? Because like Yu-Gi-Oh is really popular culturally, but no one would ever really think to play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Because I'm just imagining, right, like I'm a TCG player and I want to pick up a card game. It's like, what does Yu-Gi-Oh offer me that other card games aren't going to offer me? In terms of budget and accessibility, Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten significantly better. Don't get me wrong, but I think Yu-Gi-Oh among trading card enjoyers has almost always going to keep that stigma of being expensive or whatever. So like I feel like Pokemon has that. If you're more mature and you're older, I think naturally you gravitate to something like Magic. In terms of accessibility and stuff like online, maybe you'll hit up Master Duel, but by and large, the biggest barrier to entry is just the complexity. You know, like Yu-Gi-Oh is so hard to pick up and get into. Like it takes a lot of time and effort. Like you can learn and get into Pokemon in like an hour, dude. Like you can literally be playing a meta Yu-Gi-Oh, a meta Pokemon deck at like 80% efficiency by the end of a day, you know? And I just, like, Yu-Gi-Oh just doesn't give you that. Like, if you want to play Yu-Gi-Oh, a Yu-Gi-Oh deck at like 80% efficiency, that's like multiple, like, weeks of practice and tournament attendance. And, you know, it's just, I just really do think that Pokemon just gives you that easier access. And what's the best type of audience to engage? And it's like younger people, right? And I just think as a child, like you just have no chance at learning Yu-Gi-Oh compared to Pokemon. I think the biggest barrier to Magic is the price. Well, it depends on the type of Magic, right? Like, isn't Magic literally just like $20 entry, Friday Night Magic, draft, keep the cards, right? Like, that's the most popular form of Magic. Commander decks as well. Aren't Commander decks pretty cheap? Unbanned Tenpai to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Oh, shut up.
Asking you to compete, it asks you to collect. Collection has no losers. There's just no wrong way to do it.
Pokemon TCG isn't popular because it's easy to get into. It's popular because Pokemon is the biggest franchise in the universe, and the TCG is not why Pokemon is popular. I think the TCG definitely bridged Pokemon into the mainstream early on, and it's at the early part of the century, right? Like it was video game, anime, and card game. All three of them together were like super iconic, super popular. And I think over time, like video games have taken over and card games have stayed as more of a bit of, not niche, but definitely not as big of an industry as like video games specifically. But Pokemon does well for itself in terms of the TCG space. But again, I think like a large part is accessibility to the card game. And Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have any other way to engage with Yu-Gi-Oh. If I want to engage with Yu-Gi-Oh, what are my options? It's the card game, right? And even that, it's like there's one format, pretty much, right? Okay, you can say Genesis now, let's say 2 formats. But with Pokemon, it's like, I can play a video game. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have a video game. It's got Master Duel, which is just the card game online, but Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have a video game. At least it hasn't for like 15 years, you know? So, and the Pokemon games, say what you want, I mean, they do well, they sell. We can talk about quality, we can talk about cutting corners and cost efficiency that they, you know, try and focus on with how garbage the games have gotten recently. But Yu-Gi-Oh just doesn't have that equivalent, right? I really would love a Yu-Gi-Oh story mode. I really would.
Thing is, you know, you're never done and there's always more. And the franchise makes sure of that by adding new Pokemon in constantly every few years. Both phrases are iconic, but unfortunately, one of them had a ceiling while the other didn't. And now it's time to actually take a look on where both franchises actually sit at. Pokemon's total all-time revenue is over $150 billion. In 2024 alone, nearly 12 billion Pokemon cards were distributed worldwide, and merchandise sales hit 10.8 billion. The franchise brings in over 12 billion per year.
I looked at this on stream like a year ago or something. I vividly remember looking at the early years of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, and they were literally neck and neck. Which is why I think that Yu-Gi-Oh did something that Pokemon didn't do well enough in the early years. But in terms of these stats, the revenue, the profit of like the companies, like Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon were basically equal for like the late 90s, early 2000s, and then Pokemon just sped up and kept around, I guess. So, I mean, I'd like to find that again. I'm pretty sure it was on some comparison on Wiki. Can I like quickly look at that Wikipedia? Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh sales. That's something I can find here. Like by year or something. Market size of that TCG. So being able to break this down by year, I think, would be really important. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to find it just now.
Full Bs per year, bro. Mostly for merchandise. The anime has been watched by more than 1 billion people across 138 countries.
Jazz, like 3-sub?
It is the highest grossing media franchise in human history, fam. That's crazy. Pokemon is ahead of Star Wars, ahead of Marvel, ahead of Mickey Mouse. Yu-Gi-Oh, on the other hand, has an estimated total revenue of $20 billion, which is huge. It's a lot. Still a massive number.
James Bond is bigger than Yu-Gi-Oh? That's kind of embarrassing. Who the fuck watches James Bond? Like 50-year-old sexists?
An incredible achievement. Sad to say it, but Yu-Gi-Oh is just a fraction when it comes to comparing itself to Pokemon. And that gap, unfortunately, isn't closing. It's widening because Pokemon is a licensing machine. It's a video game pipeline. It's a card
Every British person.
boom. And Pokemon cards.
But how does
are now
Yu-Gi-Oh stack up to
considered as
Doctor
an
Who?
Alternative asset class. Like, what? And its multi-generational nostalgia engine all firing simultaneously in a way Yu-Gi-Oh structure simply doesn't allow for. First, let's be clear about something. Yu-Gi-Oh is not a failure. Not even close. 35 billion cards sold, that's an accomplishment. Yu-Gi-Oh is one of the most iconic animes in history. A trading card game that still runs massive tournaments worldwide to this day. A catchphrase that an entire generation can recite without even thinking. Characters that people genuinely love decades later. That is not a franchise that lost. That is a franchise that won, but just not at the same scale as the greatest media empire ever built. And that's the most honest answer to that question. It was never really about Yu-Gi-Oh doing something wrong.
I'm really surprised he didn't talk about the video games that
built
much.
for fundamentally different purposes. And one of those purposes happened to have no ceiling. Pokemon was built to be everything for everyone. Deliberately or accidentally, it became a video game, a TV show, a card game, a toy line, a mobile app, a fashion statement, a collector's market, and a childhood memory. All at once, all reinforcing each other. Pokemon scaled with you as you were growing up, and it was always there, the same when you always wanted to come back. Ash Ketchum for over 2 decades? That is insane. Yu-Gi-Oh was built for a specific kind of person. The kid who wanted a real challenge, who loved strategy, who loved competition, who loved winning, who felt something when Yugi drew the card he needed at the last possible second. That kid is real, and that kid is me. And millions of us exist. And Yu-Gi-Oh gave us something that Pokemon could never do. A game with actual depth and complexity. Pokemon cast the wildest net in entertainment history and caught everybody. Yu-Gi-Oh, on the other hand, cast a more deliberate net and caught the people who were looking for exactly what it offered. And those people, like myself,
seeing
and
Salmon pack up on the
watching,
YCS stage
Yu-Gi-Oh
always gives me
fans,
chills. That's so
we
cool.
never forgot it. Yu-Gi-Oh is in our roots. So it's not that Yu-Gi-Oh didn't have longevity. It's just that Pokemon's longevity became something that genuinely never been seen before in human history. Comparing anything to that isn't a knock. It's just the reality of what Pokemon became. So why didn't Yu-Gi-Oh have the same longevity as Pokemon? The real answer is almost nothing did. Almost nothing ever will. At the end of the day, both of these franchises shaped the generation. If you grew up in the late 90s or the early 2000s, one of these or both meant something real to you. And like myself, I love
a long
both.
ass outro,
I grew
Sam.
up watching Yu-Gi-Oh and I grew up watching Pokemon. And you see, I'm not playing Pokemon to this day because I resonated with Yu-Gi-Oh the most. Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh both weren't just card games. They were how we made friends. It's how we spent our allowance and how we learned that losing could hurt and winning could feel incredible. It's just so that one of them became a $150 billion empire, while the other is still out there, still competing and still dueling. And honestly, that question tells you everything you need to know. Yu-Gi-Oh still lives. And hey guys, if you guys enjoyed this type of content where, you know, I break down, you know, tweets and threads and answer pop culture questions.
Everyone can catch them all, but only one person can be the king of games.
Please let me know in the comments below if you guys
Pokemon were only a card game, it would be long dead by now.
Subscribe.
He didn't. I don't think he touched upon that enough. I think that was the most important thing. Was I mean, he mentioned it, of course, but I think the video games are just so fucking good for like they're so good. Like, oh man, like you can replay the people like. People don't replay Yu-Gi-Oh. People don't do speedruns of World Championship 2010. It's a great game, don't get me wrong. But people aren't nuzlocking Yu-Gi-Oh. People aren't doing that stuff, right? And it's like, why is that? I don't know. They were just so simple. They were so basic. They were easy, but also, you know, you could create these challenges and stuff. And I don't know. It's incredible. They do Forbidden Memories. Forbidden Memories is actually weirdly popular for challenge modes and speedruns and stuff, but that's one game, right? Pokemon has like 20 that people like regularly nuzlocke and do challenges in, you know? I mean, I guess like, you know, 5 maybe main ones. Like the original Green is really popular for nuzlocking. What is it called? Green Emerald, I think. I mean, there's a few, right? People love
like
that
this
shit.
Because I had truly an
So
amazing
Yu-Gi-Oh just
time
doesn't have that
writing
equivalent,
this entire
you know?
script and just breaking everything down and reading all these cool tweets. This video was super duper fun to make.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Go subscribe to Scam if you haven't already for whatever reason, but I think it was a good watch.